many people like to describe the journey of Mason as one where this is a university that some people still describe as a commuter school, where you need to understand commuter school is a terrible thing. And what people don't understand is that we're no longer a commuter school, we're now a residential school, where residential is a good thing, it's a desirable thing. That's sort of the way in which people describe the journey of George Mason. And what in a way, the way I've tried to change that narrative is that, first of all, that's not the journey, because let's not try to make the case that we're going to leave the non-traditional student behind and that we're just going to focus on traditional. In fact, the beauty about a university of ours is that we are trying to serve the 4 out of 4, not 1 out of 4, but 4 out of 4. And that our objective as an institution is to find more ways to serve more people the way they need to be served, not the way we somehow have decided that universities are going to offer learning, but the way people need to advance in their life.
So there's a big bucket that education needs to deal with, which is how do you make it work in the classroom? Most schools have really large classrooms. I'm sure you have classes with a couple hundred people in the classroom. How do you make the 250th person actually be able to communicate with the teacher? Because the teacher no longer really knows their name as well. It's really hard for them to ask questions in a big class and say they don't understand. So a lot of what technology has to do is really make a big class smaller and make all the different ways that it works much more efficient. The other thing I think is, I always hear from schools is, you know, distance learning is now like, it's like air. Distance learning can be a joint venture in a foreign country. It can be somebody who is at home watching a class. It could be somebody in the 30th row of a large classroom. And that is kind of the reality. So distance learning now is just like living and breathing for a school. So if enhancing the core is one big piece, and I'd say the ability to extend at will is another, I think the final thing is you have to start to be able to measure whether a student's succeeding before they actually get the grades, because by the time you have the grades, it's too late. So how do you know whether you've got partial learning? How do you measure that? Well, one of the neat things about technology is that if you actually start to have the conversation between the teachers and the students online, it leaves like a digital footprint as to, you know, are they actually doing the homework? You know, are they taking a lot of notes? Are they engaged in class? Did they answer the partial questions? And so you can start to build a footprint. Just like if we have a conversation and it's oral, there's no footprint. If you do an email, suddenly there's a trail. And it's really key as you're trying, you know, schools are actually trying to get people to graduate and retain because it's in everybody's interest. So the ability to be able to intercede in the middle is really key. So I think those are the three big things.
If a student shows up at a university with student loans, most students are going to have student loans today. If they show up at that campus with student loans, the drop, you know, if you go through the waterfall of what percentage of students drop out after the first year, between freshman and sophomore year in a traditional university is the biggest point where students leave the university system. And you figure out what percentage have student loans, and you apply, based on some studies, what percentage of those students dropped out because not just of financial problems, which is 38% of dropouts are related to financial problems, but some estimate of what portion of those could be solved because they understand how student loans work better, so you can solve it with education. You boil all that down, for a 2,000 student school, there are hundreds of 2,000 student liberal arts colleges in America. That formula costs that school $1.2 million a year. You know, that is a hidden cost through that university, and nobody has that in their budget. But that school loses $1.2 million a year for that, after you factor in financial aid and discounts on tuition and all the things that go on in college costs. So forget for a moment the cost to that person of dropping out. And by the way, the loans go away when you drop out. The banks or whomever stole you pay those back, but you now don't have a degree. Think about the cost of the institution. So if we can figure out how to harness the institution and everybody in that food chain to help that student get through that student's better off, their peers are better off, that university's better off because they produced another graduate who might come back and contribute in the future.